Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of Own the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jodi, and I'm the editor-in-chief of AutoTrader.
You really hit that simple. I'm Dan Alika. I am AutoTrader's road test editor. Simple. We make car stuff simple for Canadians.
Today, we're going to make it exciting for Canadians.
Oh, so exciting. I'm personally it's like that nerd out factor is very high because we have two spectacular race car drivers, Canadian race car drivers, Robert Wickens and Mark Wilkins, two guys that have been doing this a long time, have had very outstanding careers. And, for those of you who know who these guys are, then you're in for a treat. For those of you who don't know who they are, you are also in for a treat because their backgrounds are incredible. Like I said, both Canadian guys. Robbie's been around. He raced in Germany for a long time in the DTM before coming back to North America. He was racing in IndyCar 2018. Pocono Raceway, was involved in a pretty nasty wreck that ultimately, claimed the use of his legs. He's a paraplegic now, but I mean, his story is incredible. He's battled back to be racing at a professional level again is just incredible.
Within the span of a few years,
like less than 4 years, he's back in a car.
His recovery and his bounce back is incredible.
So I wrote a pretty cool, profile just of him and kind of his story. And just he's such an inspirational guy. And the thing that I love most is just how genuinely happy he is, and how life has kind of, thrown this huge, crazy wrench in the plans. But he just has found a way to persevere and remain very upbeat and optimistic and positive. And then Mark, his co-driver with the Hyundai Brian Herta Autosport team, they race a Elantra N TCR. Mark's been around. He's a sports car guy. He's been around for a while. He's raced in a bunch of different series. He's won some he's won the 12 Hours of Sebring, which is
that's massive,
huge. He's won at Laguna Seca, Watkins Glen, very big wins on big stages in sports car racing. So two very cool guys, and I can't wait to chat with them.
Bring them in. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining Own the Road with AutoTrader. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today.
No, thanks for having us. Happy to be here.
So first I wanted to congratulate you. You both have had an amazing year. You came off of a great win in June. And from what I understand, you both welcomed babies into the world this year. So it's been a major year for you guys. So congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a year, I think when we first got teamed up together, we were chit-chatting, Mark and I have known each other for years, but have spent kind of different career paths, right? And then we were just catching up over dinner, and, I was like, yeah, Carly and I are expecting a baby in July. He's like, oh, no way, I'm expecting a baby in April. And I was like, all right, well, should all be fine. I mean, 2 in-season babies, what could go wrong? But yeah, we made it through it.
And what's it, obviously, I mean, there's a lot to kind of unpack in terms of the season and you guys partnering, together with the team this year. But for me, I think the big one as, two kind of in my opinion, iconic Canadian racers, you guys have been around a long time. What was that like to get together as, this pair of Canucks racing mostly in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, an incredible opportunity for me. I mean, I followed Robert's career. It's been amazing. So when, Brian came to me and said, hey, what do you think about pairing with Robert Wickens? I thought, well, it would be unbelievable. Is this for real? And then as everything came together and we started our season, it's just been really surreal. It's just been a great opportunity and been a lot of fun. And sort of an incredible year of highs and some pretty tough lows. Perhaps looking back, we would have tried to do a few things different, but all in all, our highlight of the year would have been that week with Robert and Carly welcoming Wesley and 2 race wins and, pretty dramatic fashion. That was a pretty incredible week for us. And it's been great. I mean, it's just been a great pairing, great partnership. And, we're looking forward to ending the year with a fantastic result here.
And why don't we kind of start there? I know it's weird because it's sort of in the middle of the season, and we can kind of work our way backwards. Because Robbie, you and I chatted in the pits at CTMP, and it was right in kind of the middle. You guys were getting ready to race. You were telling me it was your first time racing on the Grand Prix circuit at CTMP. So why don't you talk a little bit about kind of what all went down that weekend?
Yeah, so I think, we were talking on probably a Monday or Tuesday of that weekend, and we had just kind of media obligations with Hyundai Canada, just going through the paces, home race for two of us, two Canadians. Hyundai Canada was super excited, so it was awesome to see and to be a part of that. And then, we got all of our media obligations out of the way, and we finally were thinking, okay, Thursday, let's get to the track. Let's do our track walk with the engineers. Let's get into the swing of this and try to get another race win. We were just coming off of our first win of the season at Wickens Glen, not only like just 5 days prior. So, and then I got a call from my wife that she had her 38-week follow-up with her OBG, and turned out her amniotic fluid was low, and they said, well, we need to get the baby out tomorrow. And I was like, okay.
Go time.
Yeah. So I was in Toronto. My wife was in Indianapolis. So trying to brainstorm how to do that. First, I looked at flights, and there wasn't really anything that got me in at a decent hour. And I knew it was really important for Carly, for her mother to be there. So with the help of my mom, we rallied up the moms and jumped in a van and drove down to Indianapolis. So it was, we got in at 4 a.m. Friday morning. Got a couple hours of sleep. Could call it sleep, I guess. Everyone was a little excited and nervous. And then got to the hospital for 10 a.m. And Wesley was born at noon on Friday, July 1st. So he's an American citizen, but he was born on Canada Day. So it was that was kind of nice for us. And then, newborn child, life couldn't be better. And the team asked me if they could find a way to get me to the track on Saturday, if I'd still be interested in doing the race. And I told them at the time I had to make sure, wife and baby were strong and healthy. And thankfully they were. And Saturday morning, I got back to the airport and got on a flight back to Canada. Arrived to the track at probably 1 p.m. Green flag was at 3. I didn't even turn a single lap of practice or qualifying. We had to start last. And, I just knew I had to keep the car alive to give Mark a shot for the win, and that's basically what we did. And Mark drove a great final stint, and we won that one too. And it was kind of one of those moments where it was so surreal. I couldn't even really enjoy it because I also just wanted to get back home to Carly and Wesley.
Of course. And, not to take away from, your marriage and some other milestones, but that's got to be like the greatest weekend of all time.
It was a 8-day period that I think I'll remember for the rest of my life. And not only that, I think we have a cool story to tell Wesley one day.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, I think that was also a cool win for those of you watching and listening that don't know, winning at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. That, like Robbie mentioned, that's the home track, these two Canadian racers, but just so historic. And also that, Robbie, you came up in karting at CTMP, so it was pretty significant for you to be back on home soil and to take that win.
It was amazing, and I actually kind of felt bad because I had a lot of friends and family that were going to come up, camp, do the whole Canada Day weekend, and on Thursday when we got the call that our baby was being born on Friday, I told all my friends, like, you can still go if you want, but like, just know I might not be there. And everyone was like, well, we're only going to see you. So a handful of them Saturday morning, once I told them that I was doing the race, they kind of left their cottages or wherever and came up for the day. But unfortunately, a few of them couldn't change their plans back to the original. But yeah, it could have been even better support, but it was so awesome. I mean, Canadian motorsport fans are so passionate. We're small but mighty. And that we definitely felt the love after that one.
And, you talked earlier, and Mark, you mentioned how kind of different, your careers have been. But Mark, your background, if you want to get into a little bit of that, how you started and how you've kind of got to where you are now in your racing career.
Sure. Yeah. So way back in the day, in the early 2000s, I ran with a Canadian outfit called AIM Autosport, and I spent about a decade racing up the racing ladder with them. So open wheel cars through sort of 2005, running Star Mazda with them, and then switching gears to the Grand Am series at the time in the Daytona prototype class. And at the time, Grand Am was working closely with NASCAR, and that looked like a really encouraging long-term path as far as sports car racing in North America went. So went that direction for a while, raced there until about 2012. And then I was contacted to run for a manufacturer. And, that turned into a 4-year deal. And then fast forward, based on successes in that program, the opportunity with Hyundai came about with Brian in 2018. And, it's been 5 years, which is, a long time to be with one manufacturer, one team. And it's flown by, and it's been just a wonderful experience, wonderful program, highly successful program for Hyundai, winning championships, be it drivers or manufacturers, throughout those 5 years. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of front wheel drive racing for me. I guess that's kind of my specialty, I suppose, spending the better part of the last decade focused on that. But it's been really fun, and it's been tremendously fun and rewarding to be with the Hyundai Motor Group, and Hyundai just producing really fun, great cars. And that extends, of course, to all the N brand road cars we're seeing now that are unbelievably capable and incredibly fun. So yeah, it's been a long career and a really fun one.
And also, you talked about the front wheel drive, and Robbie, you mentioned before, like, this is your first time racing front wheel drive cars. Yep. One thing that I wanted to ask you guys about, that you and I touched on briefly before, is what it's like to co-drive with such different setups, so to speak. Like, Robbie, your setup is obviously different than Mark's, and what that was like, because I don't know if this is your first time sharing, with the hand controls and the more conventional controls. If you guys could talk a little bit, just to give us some insight of what that's like.
Yeah, I mean, first off, the hand control system that I use, it's innovative, but also quite simple at the same time. And it's really a amazing job by the men and women at Brian Herd Autosport and Hyundai to kind of evolve a system that already existed from another driver, Michael Johnson, who also races with Hyundai and Brian Herd Autosport. He was kind of the first one, I guess, to call it, to race with hand controls, being a paraplegic, and he kind of paved the path for what's possible. So when I drove his car for the first time last year, me being a driver with quite a decent resume behind me of able-bodied driving, there was a lot of opportunities to make the system better, where he started racing as a paraplegic. So he didn't really have that database of what a real brake pedal should feel like, what the throttle should feel like. And because he just knows what he knows. And I was able to, I feel like, over the winter, come up with slight alterations to the current system just to make it a little more smoother and mechanically nicer to drive, just to make our lives a lot easier as driving with hand controls. Because, obviously there's a lot of stuff going on top of then using your hands for throttle, brake, upshift, downshift, any settings that we have to change on the steering wheel, But the best thing about the system is that when Mark gets into the car, it's a normal Hyundai Elantra NTCR car. There's nothing different. There's one switch that he has to flip over that takes the throttle from the steering wheel down to the pedals, and Mark's on his way. So it's a great system. It's not like we have to change a whole lot. Luckily, Mark and I like very similar handling race cars, which is kind of always the biggest worry of co-driving a car together. Is selfishly, this is my first year sharing a car. I've never had to do it my whole life. I've been able to build a car to exactly what I want all the time. And now it's kind of a fine line between the two. Mark and I have slightly different driving styles, but we both know what we need to go fast, and we try to achieve that. And, touching to what Mark said, he's a bit of a front wheel drive master. So to be his right beside him and be his teammate, learn off him, every minute over a race weekend has been super helpful for me to learn how to get the most out of these front wheel drive cars.
And would you say, obviously, I know you're a pretty, diplomatic guy. You always find the right words to say, but, obviously it's, a no-brainer that it's more of a challenge. But, what kind of challenges have you faced in adjusting to the hand controls versus the more conventional controls?
Honestly, it's tough, right? I mean, the braking is the biggest challenge. Applying the throttle is quite straightforward. You just get to the corner exit and you're like, yeah, sure, that'll do. And you give it loads of throttle and hope for the best. But in my opinion, for the way I like to drive a race car, is like braking is around 80% of the lap time gain, in my honest opinion. In order to achieve that, you need to have a lot of confidence and a lot of feeling in the brake. And in the early months of my time with Hyundai and Brian Herta Autosport, we were constantly changing the system to try get the feeling better for me. And it was kind of a catch-22 where we would make a change to increase my feeling and sensitivity, but then I would also have to like relearn my brake system. And it got to a crossroads where it's like, do we keep trying to improve the system and I'm constantly learning something new every session, or do we just stop and let me figure it out? And thankfully we got to a point where we were getting competitive and we were closer. I was gaining feeling, and I got to the point where it was just, let me just ride with this and figure it out. And that's where we've been really since the second or third race of the year. So it's been a challenge for sure, but I tell a lot of people that actually getting on top of a front wheel drive car was equally as challenging as trying to figure out the hand controls.
And so, like, this year's wins were obviously, like, very significant for you guys. But for our listeners who don't know, can you kind of explain why? Like, I saw the pictures of when you guys won, and, like, the joy coming from your faces was just, like, so infectious. So could you just kind of let us know the background on, like, why these wins were so significant?
I mean, I think from my side, it's quite clear. So I was injured in an IndyCar accident in 2018 at Pocono International Raceway, which left me paralyzed. I spent the better part of 3.5 years rehabbing, recovering, trying to get back into a race car. And it wasn't until Brian Herta Autosport and Hyundai put their faith in me to give myself a chance to drive again. So for me, that win in Watkins Glen was a huge relief for a lot of factors. So much hard work finally being rewarded. I'm a competitor by heart. It doesn't matter if I'm in the gym in rehab or if I'm driving a race car. I want to be the best of the best in everything that I do. So finally getting that win was validation that I'm on the right path, and that even though I'm paralyzed, I belong in motorsport and back in the elite levels of motorsport. And then I think the next part was we had a fairly rocky early start to our season. We got off to the season great with the podium in Daytona. And then we just had a string of bad luck, which ultimately, in hindsight, took us out of contention for the championship. But that race in Watkins Glen, first off, was the first race in the second half of the season. It was like round 6 out of 10. And to get the win there, it was kind of like, right, let's like hit the reset button and let's just go strong to the end of the year. And so, yeah, I think it was a big relief for all of us. There's a lot of hard work from the men, women, engineers, mechanics, PR, the whole team. It's not just the drivers that get a bad result, right? It's a whole effort from behind the scenes, back at the workshop, to the racetrack, to the pit crews. When we got taken out, just hit from behind in 3 consecutive races, that doesn't matter what we did differently. It was just out of our control. And that's the pity about motorsport sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of emotional release from my side for sure. And I'm sure, makes me even hungrier to try to finish off the year with the win as well.
And Mark, just to kick it back to you for a second, I mean, obviously you've achieved a lot in your racing career, but my personal opinion, man, is like you're one of the most underrated Canadian racers. I think you're so supremely talented. You've been doing this a long time. What sort of advice could you impart on, younger aspiring racers out there who are looking to kind of, follow in your footsteps a little bit, especially on the sports car side of things? You've been doing that for a long time. Somebody that wants to get into it, what kind of words of wisdom could you share?
Well, firstly, I appreciate that. I mean, that's a great question. It takes a lot of hard work. It's a tough business. It's a tough industry. But But, I just always I picked a path, and then I just sort of tried to drive towards that. So whether it was starting in karting and working up the ladder, just trying to gain a skill set, I always had a passion for racing and road cars. So my education is in automotive marketing, and then racing was always kind of part of that. And I always had this goal of trying to combine the two, to put those two passions together. So, for someone young, up and coming, it's, pick your path and then really put the work and the effort into trying to achieve that success, and, have a lot of gratitude, appreciate the opportunities that you get. It is tricky. It's tough. It's hard work. But if you do a great job on track, I mean, that's part of the puzzle. But, you need to be a spokesperson and, an ambassador for what you're doing and who you're working with, and understand what the goals are for that. So the goals for a manufacturer are obviously a little different than, if you're running just on your own in a private effort, if you will. So we're for example, at Hyundai, it's all about the manufacturers. We're representing Hyundai. We're out there collectively working together to achieve a common goal for them. And that for a driver can be tough, because I think as race drivers, we're so competitive. We all want to win. And sometimes you have to say, well, what's better for the main goal? And can I put my personal goals aside a little bit to, go for the main goal? And I just say for young drivers, remember that, and where you're trying to go and how you're trying to get there, and just be gracious and have gratitude and understand what those main goals are, and give it your best shot.
Very cool, man. And then, I know you guys only got a few minutes left, but we're heading into the last race of the season at Road Atlanta. I know you both mentioned that the season didn't necessarily go how you wanted, but if you could each kind of take a minute just to let us know, as you reflect on the season, how things went, how you feel the successes, maybe not necessarily just in the victories on the track, but just overall the season and the successes that you have each shared, as well as for, Hyundai, for the TCR effort this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a successful year on many different levels. Personally, getting back into a race car, scoring 3 podiums so far, three so far. Hopefully 4 here coming up. But it's just to get back into a race car was just an amazing accomplishment. Brian here at Autosport and Hyundai, we have a very comfortable lead in the Manufacturers Championship, which Mark commented on, which is priority 1. For the organization, and that all comes down to hard work through the entire team. The continuity from car to car, it's not just Mark and I having to work together. There's other Hyundai drivers that we all have to coexist and make sure that we get the best result for the team. And it's been a great year, and I'm really looking forward to the future. And I'm just happy that I'm back in a race car again.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I think what Robert said covers most of it. It's been a strong year overall for the team. It's another strong year, another manufacturer's title for Hyundai, and so we're checking a lot of boxes. For us personally, obviously we have very high expectations. So yes, a couple of wins was great. A podium at Daytona was really special early, but we want to win a championship, and so we're not able to do that this year, but we're going to give it our best for the last race and try to win it. We've had the most wins of the season, within our team with the 2. And so we'd love to make that 3. And so we just focus forward, and then we'll look back at the end of the season, and we'll come back stronger, and, figure out how we can do better next year and really push for that championship.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on all your success so far this year. It's only going to go up from here. So good luck with your next race. And thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, we got a practice session in like an hour and a half. So.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, good luck. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Jodi.
How cool is that?
Awesome. I literally could have talked to those guys forever.
I know.
They legitimately have a practice session this afternoon for their race at Road Atlanta.
And I'm so excited to find out when they win, not if they win.
Wow. I like that. But yeah, they're just like such good guys, and talking to them, you can learn so much. And I do think, if there were ever 2 guys to kind of follow along, or especially if you are, an aspiring racer of any kind, they're just two guys to really look up to.
I also just love seeing Canadians killing it at like an international level.
Yeah.
That makes me so proud.
Totally. And I really like that thing where we're a small but strong group, right? It's like, when Canadians in motorsport, there aren't a ton. I do think part of it has to do with weather, right? You can't race here year round like you can in a lot of the rest of the world.
It's true.
Puts us at a disadvantage. And that's why a guy like Robbie, he got shipped over to Europe at such a young age because it was the only way to really develop his talent behind the wheel. And so I do think we're at a disadvantage. So yeah, when we have a Canadian in the spotlight, everyone turns out so hard.
We're a proud bunch of people.
We really are.
We love to see it.
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much, guys, for coming on. That was so much fun. Today we have an Ask an Expert question.
Nice.
It comes from Dustin McLean from BC.
Dustin.
He says, I'm 6'3". I'm more.
That's a good height.
It's your height. You're 6'3".
I don't always. So Will, our camera guy, is always like, make sure you tell, because I'll be talking about, I'm a little cramped in here, whatever, and he's like, make sure to tell them. So then I always say I'm 6'3", and then he makes jokes about it. So
I mean, it's important. It's an important piece of information.
Good. I feel like it's a good height because if I can fit.
Then anyone can fit.
Kind of. It's like a nice, like taller than average. Okay, it's good.
Yeah.
Right?
So Dustin says he's more comfortable with trucks and not cars. And he's not afraid of needing to use his tools. So like he uses a truck a lot.
All right.
I'm thinking about getting a late model Chevy S10 as a first vehicle. You mentioned that you should be careful about not buying too much car. Do you think I might be going over my head?
No, not at all. An S10 is not a big truck. That to me is kind of the perfect size, right? Because especially if it's a late model one, it was still on the small side of the mid. Like nowadays, mid-sized trucks are they're a little big, right? But those, so we're talking like I would have to guess that would have been before the Colorado came into the picture. So like let's say early 2000s, like maybe like an 01 or an 02.
So do you think it would be roomy enough for him?
Yeah.
And all of his tools and stuff?
Yeah. It shouldn't be a problem at all. I don't think that's too much truck. It's kind of perfect. I wish more people were like Dustin. Dustin, you're a trailblazer, my friend. That's honestly, more people should be, and especially he lives in BC.
Yeah.
He's going to find some like
beautiful
perfectly
ones.
Clean, just so good. Imagine remember the S10 Extreme?
I know.
It had that like crazy kit on it and it was like, yeah. Anyways,
that one was fun.
Dustin, I think you're on the right track.
Great. Thanks so much for your question, Dustin. And if any of you would like to ask Dan or I questions about maintenance, cars, if you're cross-shopping a few things, if you need advice, if you want to know what kind of food we like, whatever, you can email us at expert@trader.ca.
Yep.
And until then, I guess we'll see you on the next episode.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for joining Own the Road with AutoTrader.
Thanks, guys.